It's hard to believe, but we're already at lesson 5, and I'm doubly excited, as I shared with a couple of you that we've been talking about, based on the responses that we've been getting, and I really appreciate those. I'm combining here operations and administration to give us 2 lessons for 7 and 8 to talk about finance, and we'll talk about finance accounting and accountability in the 7th lesson, and then financing, all the types of financing for your company and how to acquire the capital or the capital structure that fits your personal business model. Now, I have to admit a bias in combining operations and admin. That means that it's not one of my favorite topics. And if you'll indulge me again to remind you, we talk about strategy and tactics, and we talk about 40,000 feet where we look at things, and then down in the weeds where we know where we're going and what we're doing, and we're doing with the details or draining the swamp. And operations and admin, statistically, from what I've learned over the years, less than 17% of people are gifted in the administration area, and an even smaller amount are gifted in the area of operations, and they have a unique capability in that area. So combined, there's like a third of you that this is exciting, and that means, on the other hand, 2/3 of you, and I'm in that 2/3, deal with this the way you deal with the dentist. It's just something that has to be done. But again, remember, we're talking about the mindset, framework, and content for business success. So we're not talking about here turning you into an operations manager or an administrative expert, but going over the key things that you need to know and understand to be a free enterprise warrior. And what's been really helpful to me, and again, an underlying of why we're continually intrigued that the lean startup is such an effective mentality for the early stages of a business, is that we're being reminded that not everyone is cut out to be a free enterprise warrior from the founder perspective. It takes a certain discipline, it takes a certain commitment, it takes a certain level of energy and discipline to be an effective warrior if you're a founder. You know, you can play that role, as we've talked about, again, as an advisor, lawyers, CPAs, board members, employees, or as an investor. But we are again reminded, and our transition working with companies that are more on the Wall Street side, now working with the Elm Street side and the Main Street in the middle, that the idea of building and growing a business is just not for everybody, and our focus is on helping those. And again, we remind you here about the $1 trillion journey, that our focus is here not just to help you have success, and we're not interested in starting businesses, we're interested in successful businesses. And to put that in context, I mean, we're not interested just in starting. You've got to be involved with those that are actually focused on succeeding and going through the disciplines for that, because not just does it benefit you and create wealth and opportunity for you, but it's a fundamental aspect of our society and our economic system. So again, why this course? Just remind you, and I'm doing this, I apologize, a little bit of redundancy. Some of you are joining this late. Some of you had told me, quite frankly, your schedule hasn't allowed you to go through every detail. This is a beta course of 8 lessons. This essentially very, very low cost, because we're getting feedback for you as a setup for the courses that we've developed over the years that we'll be introducing in September, that go into the detail in each of these areas, but introducing you to the Stratia 7 and hopefully giving you some very actionable information in the meantime. Now, I just used the term Stratia 7 for those of you that are just hearing this for the first time. It's our approach to organizing everything about business into 7 fundamental categories, and every one of these categories have an important role, and whether they're equal or not depends on the type of business you're trying to go, your basic skills and abilities, the kind of team you build, but every single one of them have to be addressed. And we started off by addressing the strategic issues, really just figuring out, why should you exist? The fundamental question of starting to explore what your positioning is going to be, what you bring to the table that's different from everybody else. And, in a world of Coke and Pepsi, there continues to be hundreds of new drinks introduced every year. You have to figure out why, if you're entering a market with a dominant player, why the market should pay attention to you. Then corporate is the basic structure under which you go forward. And one of the things I think some of you now, and I appreciated a couple of you on a couple of private calls the other day, communicated, you're starting to see, while there's 7 discrete areas, they're all interrelated. And for example, the corporate decisions play into your exit strategy and financing, and it also plays into your strategic positioning of whether you're going to go after investors or not, and what kind of a team you're going to build, and what kind of a management team is required to achieve your goals. Then we jumped into marketing. Again, being transparent, my favorite area. Nothing happens until somebody sells something. So it's I view marketing as first among equals, and over the years I've had a lot of discussions with academics, with actual entrepreneurs, with some very talented technical people. But bottom line, we went through the issues in marketing, and if you missed that, it's really important for you to pick that up. And then last week we talked about product, and again, that's an area you can start to see where you have a product service matrix with how you want to position yourself, but then that enters into how you deliver on what you want to do in the product side, and how you plan in the packaging. And again, dependent upon your particular business model, we lump under product, for simplicity's sake, the concept of a service. Many of you will never manufacture anything per se, but that's part of that process of understanding that distinct area where you figure out what you're delivering, whether it's a virtual product, whether it's a digital product, or a physical product, and whether you're selling a whole lot of something or a little bit of something, razors or razor blades, that whole discussion. And the key is to make sure your product, and this is an important part we want to communicate from the mindset point of view, instead of trying to tell the world, I've got the product that's going to save the world, you want to be the Yoda. You want your customer to be the hero. So as Yoda did to Luke Skywalker, helping him solve a problem and grow and giving him advice, you want to position yourself with your customer. I'm relieving this pain for you. I'm giving you this pleasure, or I'm helping you solve a problem that affects your life. Instead of focusing on you and shining all the spotlight on you, the spotlight is on the customer and how it fits into their lives. And while they'll spend money on you or your product or service instead on something else, even if it's not in the exact same product category as what you're providing. So today, as I said, we're going to cover 2 distinct areas. We'll lump them together, but we're going to talk about operations. Now, everybody, whether you're virtual or whether you're physical, has to have a workflow for your product. You create it by writing, you create it by working with a graphics designer, you create it by making videos, and then you have to figure out the best way to deliver that product or service the best way possible. Now, the best way possible, remember, doesn't mean the most expensive, it doesn't mean the highest quality, but it means you figuring out in your product service matrix where your operations have to deliver. There's even in a less expensive product, you want to deliver some level of service, but you may not be able to deliver a lot. You recognize out in the marketplace, you just set your expectation based on your pricing and your customer. But in operations, we also get into the area of a backup disaster recovery plan. This is particularly important to nowadays, especially if you're internet-based, especially if you're cloud-based. We just had a problem in a couple of our companies. We thought we had it taken care of. Fortunately, we had some really bright people jump on it right away, and it wasn't easy, but they solved the problem. We got hacked, and it could have been disastrous. But we've dealt with a number of people that lost their entire business, their customer list and everything, because they didn't deal with this issue. And there's two distinct areas. One is how you run your business and protect it from cyber attacks and the threats on the internet. The other is how do you recover from your business if there's a disaster. If we've actually had clients who had their homes burned down and they were working out of their home, and that's how you recover from somebody robbing you and taking your PC, and oops, I didn't have a backup in the cloud, or oops, I didn't have a hard drive stored away somewhere, or a flood or fire, or any of those things that happen in life. So that's what operations deals with. Now, I love this chart, and those of you that have heard me talking, this is a major part of our tsunami effect focus, and that's a different book and a different course, but we make the point, if you'll look here very closely to this curve, it's really important from a mindset point of view for you to understand that until as late as the 1780s, after the nation was founded, and well into the 1800s, really post-Civil War, the discussions we're having today and the opportunities available to you as just an average American did not exist anywhere in the world or anywhere in history. So getting a sense not just of gratitude for where we are, but of the uniqueness of the markets that are out there, and many of the things that are possible today and happening today didn't happen for 10,000, 6,000, whatever your view is, of years of human history. It just wasn't something that people even considered, talking about exit strategies and personal finances and creating value and technology. So that all, and that's a great slide, and we spend some time talking about that on one of our other videos we'll make sure you have access to. But the idea of the starter founder is the Romans didn't have that idea. The Medicis didn't have that idea. There was a little bit of what we might today call entrepreneurship. There was a little bit of business savvy. But to have a class teaching people how to be a founder, to have our unique free enterprise system, our unique legal system, our unique culture environment, the unique technologies, this is the best time in history to consider what we're talking about. Now, that means that a single person can become a $1 million plus business and not have any employees, not have any physical presence, operate literally out of their bedroom, and it's just worth taking into consideration so that it can expand your mindset to think about, if that potential's there, and I'm thinking about doing this, and you're wondering why hasn't somebody done this before, or why hasn't somebody done it better, it may not have been physically or conceptually possible as recently as a couple, 3 decades ago. So really let your mind explore the uniqueness of where we are right now, and consider that with outsourcing, the internet, virtual assistants, global sourcing, scalability of your business. I've told the story on one of the earlier videos of how when we used to lay out a business plan, we had some bookstores, and we'd get these demographic maps, 5 miles, 8 miles, depending on what it was that we thought were our potential market. And there might be 34,000 people in that market in a city of of 1 million. That was our market, and that was essentially it. Well, today, your market's the world, and that is literally the case. I could spend the whole time on that, but I've listened to some summits and some other things recently, getting some of the statistics, and it's just really intriguing to me that even I, as an old school guy, and I've tried to be transparent with y'all about this, we are constantly challenging ourselves to step out and look at the new mindset for seizing opportunities in this environment. Now, let me also throw a little bit of cold water on that. It makes it even more important. I mentioned this on the Mastermind, MindMeisters, a mind mapping program, but I mentioned this in a couple of discussions over the last few weeks. I was in a meeting a few weeks ago, and the individual made the point that the latest data post-pandemic shows that they expect 9 million businesses to be created over the next 5 years. Now, that's on top. I won't get into all those other statistics, but what I sit there thinking is that, whoa, that's neat. But if people don't do things different and the statistics are consistent over that 5 years, that means a phenomenal reality that of that 9 million, 6,300,000 people are going to experience the heartache and the financial loss and the disappointment and the embarrassment of starting a business and it not succeeding. So it's like the floodgates have been opened and the opportunity's there and the desire is there, but it makes it even more important to focus on what does it take to not just start a business but turn it into a successful business. And in the area of operations, we see here these things, okay? And I say things because some of them apply to each of you and some of them don't apply at all, depending on your business model and your direction and what you're trying to do. But let's break those down a little bit. The first thing for you to do, again, depending on your business model, and again, transparent, true confession, we are constantly looking at this ourselves internally. It's hard to give up some of the things we're used to controlling, and it's hard to balance risk with returns, but virtually everything can be outsourced now. And I spoke to an individual. I've actually done a little consulting for them. We don't do that type of consulting, but some writing and some ghost writing for him, one of the leading business guys that has a website, and he uses virtual assistants better than anybody I've seen, and has kept small and has thousands of clients. But one thing we both talked about, I want to raise this red flag. I should have probably put it in the video, but we do have it on our material that's going onto the website. You must be concerned today when you outsource about piracy, intellectual property, theft, protecting your brand. It is increasingly the case that both individuals and foreign governments, and this isn't paranoia, this isn't political, they are offering services to entrepreneurs and small businesses only to get hold of their intellectual property. And they can do that at a very low price if they're well funded because of what they're doing for it. So if a freelancer seems to be very competent and professional but unbelievably cheap, whether in the United States or elsewhere, you need to be increasingly wary. I just got a study from a lawyer that we work with that 3 more help you register your patent firms were shown to be shells for a foreign government, that they were letting people send all their information to them about what it was that they were going to try to get a patent for, and then stealing it and registering it themselves. And not a small number. It's a FBI level investigation. So that's just one note, but the more you outsource, the more you can scale rapidly, the less startup capital you need, the more you can focus on your core abilities. But that's also introducing an issue of risk, and we have a whole separate discussion on the issue of risk and risk mitigation that we'll touch on when we get into finance and talking about securities laws. But when you make these decisions, it comes down to you personally deciding, okay, how much capital am I going to spend versus how much productivity am I going to gain? And I, coming from a blue-collar background where my parents always traded their hours for dollars, they never had any opportunity to leverage it. I'm always hyper about this issue of dollars for hours or hours for dollars. You individually can decide how much time you want to spend doing what we might call the administrative things, some of the in-the-weeds stuff, the less critical stuff, or you want to go do what you're good at doing, make more money, If you can make $100 an hour, and I know some of you can make consistently much more than that, and some of you are happy to make $30 an hour in your current situation, well, you need to look at, if I hire somebody to do that for me, then, you know, I'm better off doing something. One of the things that I've always loved to take care of my lawn. Again, growing up the way I did, I mowed lawns for income. But I reached a point, partly because of illness, but also because of time, where it was simply silly. I used to mow yards at 50 cents an hour. Now it costs me $40, $50 to have my lawn mowed, and we're actually, it's not even our home because of our work and with the local university. We're in a different home, but it takes $50 to $60, $40 to $60 with a tip. And if I was going to do it, I'd have to have the mower, I'd have to have the blower, and I'd have to take the time to do that, and then the time to sit back and cool off, and all those things. So it's much, 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 much easier for me to work an hour and make much more than that and pay somebody to do that. I like doing that because I know what it means to them, and I can tip them well. But I have to give up the idea of doing that. So that's just a metaphor in your life. What are those things that you're doing because you haven't paid somebody else to do it, that you could do something that you're really good at or you get paid at, and you could have somebody outsource that in your business or in your life. But in this area of the basic questions and issues you have to consider in operations, operations is where you get a chance to build some competitive barriers. We talk about pricing and marketing and branding, but if you do your job better, now I like to talk about Southwest Airlines. There's no better example of a startup that leveraged their unique positioning than Southwest Airlines. They figured out very early that they could not compete head-to-head with American and United, which were the big airlines when they started back in the 70s. A lot of other factors, but let's just home in on this one aspect of it. So they did a very careful, brilliant analysis and said, okay, we're going to use one kind of airplane. We're going to fly between only 3 cities. We're not going to assign seats. We're not going to serve food. We're going to have the same maintenance people working on the same plane with all the same reserve parts, all the same standard procedures, and we're going to focus on getting our airplanes in the air instead of sitting on the ground. And so they built major competitive barriers by focusing on the operational side of their business while doing all the other things of branding and pricing and so forth. Then we come to the issue of intellectual property.